All right, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Sam, thank you for the wonderful introduction. My name is Peter Bacas. I work for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It's good to see all of you here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And today I'm going to give you a brief overview on the efforts the U.S. EPA is taking in low-carbon construction policy here within the United States as it relates to concrete and cement. So as a bit of context, in 2022, Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which directed the U.S. EPA to develop a determination for substantially lower embodied carbon construction materials for the U.S. General Services Administration, or GSA, and U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Highways Administration. This is associated with over, I think, $4.15 billion in funding to those two agencies to procure substantially lower embodied carbon construction materials as determined by the EPA. The 2022 Inflation Reduction Act also provided us with funding for grants and technical assistance to improve and increase environmental product declarations within the United States, as well as to create a label to help purchasers identify and procure lower embodied carbon construction materials. The first step that we took was in establishing our interim determination. This was set in December of 2022. This enabled both the GSA and Federal Highways Administration to implement their portions of the IRA, and it defined substantially lower embodied carbon construction materials as the best performing 20th percentile of greenhouse gas emissions in CO2 equivalents, or GWP. If that was not available within the project location, you could then use the 40th percentile, and if that was not available, you can use better than estimated industry average. And effectively what this set the tone for was a tiered approach in threshold setting and benchmarking at the federal level based on availability within the project's location. From there, earlier this year in around, I think it was July, maybe it was June, we announced our grant selections totaling over $160 million to help support the shift to cleaner construction materials. This was associated with 5 broad project categories relating to improving the data platforms for EPDs, helping create tools and resources to produce EPDs, create and update product category rules, which are the standards that power EPDs across sectors, including cement and concrete, ultimately to help develop and verify EPDs, as well as to help improve EPD data. This included selections to 38 different grantees covering 14 material types within 5 project categories covering the entirety of the United States, and as well as our territories within Puerto Rico, Guam, and more. As a quick highlight for the grants that covered the larger concrete sector, there's over $42.5 million that directly support the concrete industry, the broader concrete industry. Sampling of this includes Beltertech, Heidelberg Materials, Wholesome, the National Ready-Mix Concrete Association, the National Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association, Old Castle Infrastructure, the Portland Cement Association, the Precast Concrete Institute, and more. It's great to see many of our selectees in the room today, and I know Brian's probably going to be talking about NRMCA's specific selection in a few moments. But overall, this $42.5 billion is going directly into the concrete sector to help outline EPDs and improve product category rules. In addition to our EPD grants and technical assistance, we've also started working on our labeling program. This label program has 3 objectives and is associated with $100 million in allocated funds from the Inflation Reduction Act. The first objective is to help facilitate federal procurement of lower embodied carbon construction materials by helping outline to federal purchasers, namely at GSA and Federal Highways, but also other agencies, to help provide them a simple way to identify a lower carbon construction material. Of note, within the past 2 or 3 weeks, the Department of Defense actually rolled out an updated specification relating product sourcing to our labeling program as it rolls out. Another one of our objectives is to help identify early adopters and market movers, basically signaling if you have an EPD and meets certain thresholds, it may be able to be used more easily for federal construction projects, as well as ultimately helping to unify the market through standardized market systems, not only across the federal government, but also outlining our requirements in a public fashion to help improve the quality and consistency of data and processes used to quantify the embodied carbon of emissions. In terms of our approach, we outlined this earlier this year in August, and it took 4 main areas, focusing, targeting the largest of greenhouse gas emissions, So we're initially focusing on the production stage, which is consistent with the Inflation Reduction Act and current data available on the market. But we are open to expanding beyond production and going into areas beyond lifecycle module A3. We're highlighting our top performers by following that same tiered approach, ensuring data consistency, ensuring that label products will have EPDs built under North American product category rules. For those who may not be aware, the product category rules that cover the United States also cover Canada and Mexico. And we've also taken a material agnostic approach. So while we're primarily focusing on 4 construction materials at the moment, which is ready-mix concrete, asphalt, glass, and structural steel, everything that we've done has been in a material agnostic approach which could allow other materials to join the program as funds and capacity allows. As part of this, we've outlined 3 implementation phases. The first phase, which is where much of our efforts are right now, is improving data quality. This is drawing on ongoing data improvements to the federal LCA Commons to help fill in existing data gaps, determining PCRs that align with our PCR criteria, and collecting third-party verified EPDs and applicable industry benchmarks. As we go into phase 2, we'll be going through the act of conducting threshold setting. So this is where we'll be developing thresholds for each material and product type, considering various performance requirements, regionality, and viable industry averages, ultimately leading to finalized thresholds informed by stakeholder inputs via public comment. And then lastly, phase 3 is where we'll be going about the act of labeling. So using EPDs and evaluating products in order for them to determine, to be applicable for our low carbon label. I think in August, we only released around 200, maybe 250 pages of documentation, so a very light read. But to quickly summarize all of the different documents that we released, some of the main ones focus not only on our label program approach, but also various data quality aspects that we are doing at the EPA to strengthen the broader market, not just for concrete, not just for cement, but the entire construction sector. So for EPD development, one of the documents we released is our PCR criteria, which is outlining an overview of EPA's data quality criteria for PCRs across the construction sector without providing specific guidance to a sector-specific requirement. In order to support the PCR criteria, we released 3 supporting documents, namely our data gap assessment, which provided an overview of data gaps based on conversations with product category rule committees and other knowledgeable stakeholders into the data gaps within the federal LCA Commons and other secondary life cycle inventory or LCI data sets. We also released a data quality assessment methodology, or DQAM. This outlined a methodology for systemically evaluating the data quality of secondary LCI data used in LCA's underlying PCRs and EPDs. It's important to note that this data quality methodology is not required to be used, but we are providing as a tool to practitioners as one such option that they could consider. We've also released an LCIA methods and other impact categories methodology, which is containing characterization factors for key life cycle impact assessment categories for use in LCAs and underlying EPDs. For transparency with the broader public, we also released the secondary data improvement plan, which is outlining EPA's and the broader federal government's approach to improving the secondary LCI data in the free to use and public sector for use in LCA's underlying EPDs. We've also recently just completed signing the Federal LCA Commons MOU, which formalizes the establishment of the Federal LCA Commons between the U.S. Department of Energy, the EPA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Department of Transportation, and NIST. Part of our key documents within phase 1, just going a bit more discrete into the PCR criteria and secondary data improvement plan. The PCR criteria is aimed to level set data quality for all PCRs in the construction sector. From there, it's really focusing on the transparency and data quality across 3 different sections and numerous appendices, including PCR scope and reference, criteria addressing LCA and product category rules, the specification of data, and around 5 appendices going into whether it's recommended text for the inclusion of the disclosure of data, Energy Star information, information on RECs and energy attribute certificates, and more. It's also providing outlines and context into the use of free-to-use and publicly accessible data sets. In our secondary data improvement plan, we're outlining efforts that we are taking, which is providing insights into the existing challenges with data use held on the federal LCA Commons, as well as our plan to improve the secondary data and the impact of our secondary data work. One of the key things that we've released for those familiar with LCA and LCA characterization is efforts that we are taking to update Tracy from Tracy 2.1 to Tracy 3.0. Those who are familiar with Tracy 2.1 may recall that it's currently using IPCC characterization factors from AR4, which are a bit out of date, just being very blunt. Most of the world is now on AR6, and so one of the things that we are doing as part of this update is moving to IPCC AR6 characterizations factors for GWP, since that is much of the focus. The QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen will take you to our data quality improvement page, where you can find these documents, as well as many of our supporting documents and the label program approach, which outlines phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Regarding the federal LCA Commons, this effort is formalizing and provides structure for the federal LCA Commons as an interagency initiative. This has quite literally, I think this past week, finally received all the different signatures across these signatory agencies, and this will be publicly posted shortly. Lastly, we are working on rolling out our EPD technical assistance. We've made some announcements in the past few weeks, but to request direct EPD technical assistance, please visit our website. If you scan that QR code, there should also be a hot link to it as well. But in short, you can request EPD technical assistance for grants via the link on screen. You can also use tools, resources, and funding opportunities at epa.gov/greener products, as well as other items that could help reduce embodied carbon in manufacturing, namely industrial assistance efforts, energy efficiency guides, as well as efforts from our EPA's Energy SAR program to help aid energy efficiency at production facilities. I believe this is primarily within the cement sector, but work is ongoing regarding concrete as well. Please feel free to reach out to us at Embodied Carbon at EPA.gov. There's additional resources at the QR code at the bottom regarding many of the documents that I spoke about, and I know we'll be doing a panel Q&A at the end of the session. So please feel free to always reach out to us. You can also reach out to me at my last name of Bacas, BACAS.peter@EPA.gov. And yeah, thank you for having me. Looking forward to the discussion at the end of this presentation. Thank you.